Welcome back to the In the Clinic podcast with Rob. And if you're over 40 and you're looking for the best way that you can use caffeine to enhance your fitness, to enhance your nutritional goals, to enhance your energy levels, but also to enhance your metabolic rate, this is the podcast for you. Because today we're tackling one of the most popular and often misunderstood topics in fitness, that is caffeine. And it's something that a lot of us rely on to kind of jumpstart our day or to just get us through a tough workout. But have you ever wondered what's really happening in your brain and your body when you sip down that warm cup of coffee or possibly an energy drink? So in today's episode, we're diving deep into the science of caffeine. We're exploring what it is, how it interacts with our bodies, and really how it can play a role in fitness. So we're looking at the benefits and the potential downsides and the most effective ways to use caffeine as a tool to achieve your goals. Plus, we're going to answer some of the questions that a lot of my listeners have, plus share some real life applications and really give you the tips for personalizing caffeine use. So grab your cup of coffee, grab your tea, grab your water, whatever you want, and let's jump in. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is caffeine? Now, caffeine is a natural stimulant, and it's found in a lot of different plants like coffee beans, tea leaves, cocoa. And throughout history, people have often consumed caffeine as part of their diets. It's not just for taste, but it's also for the benefits. So think about it. Our ancestors, whether they were drinking tea in ancient China or coffee in Yemen, use caffeine as a means to stay alert and energized during the long, hard days. But here's something that you might not know. Caffeine is actually classified as a psychoactive drug. It's the most widely used psychoactive substance globally. And just like other psychoactive substances, caffeine has a powerful impact on our central nervous system. Now, what sets caffeine apart from other stimulants is that it's relatively safe when consumed in moderation. And the World Health Organization even recognizes it as a harmless stimulant when used responsibly. But what exactly makes caffeine work so well at keeping us awake and alert? Now, this is where things get interesting and where we get into the science of adenosine receptors. So to understand caffeine, we really have to talk about adenosine receptors. So picture this. As you go about your day, a substance called adenosine builds up in your brain. Adenosine is a neurotransmitter, and as it binds to specific receptors, it signals to your brain that you're ready to relax and wind down. So think of adenosine as a sort of internal timer. The more time you spend awake, the more adenosine accumulates. And by evening, when you have a lot of adenosine built up, it sends strong signals to your brain that it's really time for sleep. So your nerve cell activity slows and your blood vessels dilate to allow for increased oxygen flow and really preparing your body for rest. But here's where caffeine comes into play. Caffeine is chemically similar to adenosine. So when you drink that cup of coffee or that tea, caffeine can actually bind to these same receptors. So unlike adenosine, though, caffeine doesn't slow down cell activity. Instead, it blocks the receptors without activating them. And this keeps your neurons firing and your energy levels up. Essentially, caffeine is like a friend who stands in line for you so you can jump ahead. By blocking adenosine from doing its job, caffeine truly prevents that tired feeling from setting in, which explains why you feel alert. But there's more to it. Once your brain detects this high level of activity, it releases a cascade of stimulating hormones, including adrenaline. And this whole process is why caffeine doesn't just wake you up, but also gives you a feeling of heightened alertness and energy. So think about that first cup of coffee in the day. I know for me, when I slowly wake up in the morning, that's something that I look forward to. But I also know for me that caffeine is a productivity enhancer. And I found that my best work that I do is actually in the morning. So before the sun comes up, before anybody can say, hey, Rob, can you do this? What truly I can do is isolate what is my most mentally taxing activity that I need to do. It could be creating a podcast. It could be developing a new product. It could be developing new systems. But whatever takes a high level of intellectual thought, that is usually what I reserve the morning for because my mind is clearest. And then after I have some coffee, it enhances my alertness. It increases my mental acuity, and I am actually the most productive. So that's the biggest hack that I've found for me is that cup of coffee in the morning really helps me be the most productive. Plus, as I move into the morning, sometimes I'll do a workout in the morning. After that caffeine hits in, doubling my energy level. On top of it, as I come into the office at the first part of the day, well, that's my chance too that I'm at the heightened amount of alertness, energy level, ready to tackle any situation that comes our way. So let's dive a little deeper into those adrenaline responses, sometimes called the fight or flight response, which is one of the most immediate effects of caffeine. So adrenaline or epinephrine is the hormone responsible for preparing your body for action. It's what makes you feel pumped after the first cup of coffee. So here's a quick breakdown of what adrenaline does to the body. First, it dilates the pupils. Your pupils widen to take in more light, enhancing your vision. Number two, it opens your airways. And this helps you take in more oxygen, which is why caffeine can be beneficial to people with respiratory issues. Number three, it speeds up your heart rate. Your heart pumps more blood to supply your muscles with oxygen. Number four, it increases blood sugar. So the liver starts releasing extra glucose for an instant energy boost, which is why caffeine can be used as a pre-workout. And number five, it enhances muscle tension. You're literally more on edge, ready for action. So this reaction might be helpful in situations where you need a boost of focus and energy, like during a workout. However, there are some scenarios where this heightened state might be less desirable, like if you're trying to wind down for the evening. But adrenaline is only part of the caffeine story. There's also the impact of dopamine. That's the feel-good neurotransmitter. So think about a time that you felt the effects of adrenaline after caffeine, where it gave you, or maybe you took too much caffeine and you started to build that feeling of almost jitters. And you almost had this level of, I can take on the world, I can tackle any task, I'm ready to go. It might be before a workout, it might be before a social engagement, and you almost were too hyped. See, that's what happens to me at times too, and I have to watch out with caffeine because caffeine can actually give me too much of a high. It can make me too amped. So I have to really monitor my level of caffeine because you also get that adrenaline boost. And if you're going to go into give a speech, you're going to do something that you're a little bit nervous about, caffeine can help bring mental clarity, but also brings adrenaline. And now you already have adrenaline from being prepared for that speech, which means what? You could get a double dip of adrenaline, which really increases your jitters. It increases your worry. So caffeine is something that I have to look out for. So caffeine does have a lot of positive effects in relation to fitness. And there are three big benefits that caffeine bring to the table with fitness. One, it helps boost your energies. Two, it helps enhance your endurance. And the third part, it actually helps promote fat burning. So specifically, as we've discussed, caffeine's impact on adenosine and adrenaline helps increase energy. So we already know that. And this is especially beneficial for morning workouts or days when you're feeling sluggish, such as if you stayed up too late. So with caffeine, you might find yourself even more motivated to hit the gym, especially for those more intense sessions. So number one, caffeine can help boost your energy. Number two, it can enhance your endurance. So studies show that caffeine can improve endurance overall, and it makes it particularly useful for cardio-based activities. For example, a cyclist or a runner might use caffeine to stay energized and focused over long distances. So the science backs this up. Caffeine reduces your perception of effort, meaning you feel less tired even as you push yourself harder. And the third way it can help with fitness is promoting fat burning. Caffeine enhances thermogenesis, which is your body's ability to burn calories for heat. And this means that your metabolic rate is elevated, even if it's just a slight boost. Plus, caffeine mobilizes fatty acids, and that helps the body use more stored fat as fuel during exercise. So, for people focused on fat loss, caffeine can be a helpful addition overall. And all these benefits really make caffeine an effective tool for a lot of people, especially when you combine this with a good diet and consistent exercise. But as we know, caffeine isn't perfect. It also has its drawbacks, especially if it's overused or used at the wrong times. So, first of all, caffeine can lead to tolerance or dependency because over time the body really adapts to regular caffeine use, meaning you need higher doses to feel the same effect. And this can lead to dependence. And if you're trying to quit or reduce your caffeine intake, you might experience withdrawal symptoms like headaches, irritability, or fatigue. Number two, the drawback with caffeine is increased heart rate and blood pressure. So, since caffeine triggers adrenaline, it can raise your blood pressure and your heart rate, which this isn't typically harmful in kind of mild doses or moderate doses, but it is something to watch, especially if you already have cardiovascular health issues or are sensitive to stimulants. And the third one, which is perhaps the most critical downside for any type of fitness enthusiast, is how caffeine impacts your sleep. Because good sleep is essential for muscle recovery and mental clarity. But since caffeine has a half life of around 4 to 6 hours, consuming it too late in the day can really interfere with your natural sleep cycle. And this leads to poor rest and poor recovery. So, knowing these downsides, it's essential to strike a balance in your caffeine consumption, using it as a tool rather than becoming reliant on it. So I know a couple of areas for myself is I've learned the hard way the negative effects of caffeine. Because for one, I really like coffee, but I also really like the way that it provides more mental clarity for myself. I've used it all the way back to when I was in college and I was studying for exams. But I also like how it increases my overall energy because then I can use it for fitness as well. So I have found that over the years that the most I can have in a day is 2 cups of coffee. Because what's happened in the past is I've gone from 1 cup progressively to 2 cups, progressively to 3 cups, progressively to 4 cups. Before I know it, I'm substituting my water intake for caffeine or coffee. And what then happens is I slowly become dehydrated. And as I play basketball in the mornings, the weekends, as I jog, do fitness activities, I'm slowly dehydrating my body. And I had at one point where I got done playing basketball in the morning and I went to work and I didn't feel right. I felt a little upset in my stomach. I felt a little, ooh, things don't. And all of a sudden, I started getting a headache. And as that headache set in, my first initial thought was, I need to have a cup of coffee. That's why I'm getting a headache. Of course. But I started drinking that coffee and I actually felt even more sick. And then all of a sudden I started to lose a little bit of vision in my left eye and I started to develop a blind spot and I couldn't figure out why I was getting a blind spot. I'm like, this isn't good. And then my headache became more pronounced in the front of my forehead and I realized I'm getting a migraine. And I immediately told my office assistant at the time, I need to leave right now. And so she canceled all my clients. I ended up going home. I went right into the bed, drank a whole bunch of water, jumped into bed, and I fell asleep for about 3 hours. One, it scared my wife. But two, it was a prime example of how I use caffeine too much, and it actually caused more dehydration in my body. I didn't supplement with enough water, and it led to migraines. So for me, I've found that caffeine's a great tool, but I have to watch it and make sure that I'm supplementing with water and I'm not overextending myself by using caffeine as my energy boost. So let's talk about how to use caffeine positively to support your fitness goals without really going overboard, because I've done that multiple times. So number one, timing is everything. For best effects, caffeine consumption about 30 to 45 minutes before your workout is the key. And this gives it time to kick in and really enhance your workout performance. Avoid caffeine late in the day, especially if sleep is crucial for you. Number two, use it strategically. Instead of consuming caffeine daily, consider saving it for your tougher workout days. This way, your body doesn't build up a high tolerance for caffeine and then you need more and more, but you still get that kick when you need it most. And number three, for fitness, pair caffeine with other healthy habits. So hydrate well and eat a balanced diet, something that I didn't do before, because caffeine can be dehydrating. So make sure that you're staying hydrated, especially if you're training intensely, because you don't want to end up with a blind spot in your vision like I did and start getting migraines. So these strategies can really help you get the benefits of caffeine without overdoing it. So now let's shift to some practical tips and safe doses for caffeine. So start with small doses. If you're new to caffeine, start with a low dose of around 100 milligrams and then gradually increase if needed. Some pre-workouts that you get before your workout will contain very high levels of caffeine, and this can be excessive. So pay attention to the label, and it tells you on there how much caffeine is actually in each serving. And start with minimal amounts. Start with under 100 milligrams of caffeine. And then try cycling your caffeine use. Take breaks occasionally to reset your tolerance and avoid dependence. I know for myself, about once a year, I just get off caffeine altogether for 2 to 3 weeks. And I just switch to only hydrating water. I might grab some bubbly, which is carbonated, uh, non-sugar water, and I will use those exclusively to reset my tolerance level. And I do that when I find that I'm going from 1 cup to 2 cups to 3 cups to 4 cups in a day. I have to reset because two, it robs my energy. Think of those adenosine receptors that once they clear, they're not giving you more energy. They're just preventing you from feeling fatigue. So once those clear out, all that fatigue comes back. So I find that if I'm using too much caffeine, then I get really tanked at the end of the day, and my overall productivity for the day goes down. So let's answer some common questions about caffeine use in fitness. This one came in from a listener that said, should I use caffeine every time I work out? Well, that's a good question. I recommend using it selectively to prevent tolerance and to really keep the effects fresh. Think of it as a boost for your most challenging days. This question came from one of our 4% members that is a part of our community. How can I tell if I'm consuming too much caffeine? That's a really good question. If you're feeling jittery, anxious, or finding it hard to sleep, these could be signs of too much caffeine. Also, if you feel like you can't get through the day without using caffeine, that's a sign that you need to cut back. So overall, to wrap this up, caffeine is a powerful tool and an accessible tool in the world of fitness, but it's also essential to use it wisely. By understanding how to use the effects of the adenosine receptors and how it interacts with our body, we can really harness caffeine to support our fitness goals without the downsides. So overall, if you use caffeine right now, consider using these tips to help enhance it. But also, if you're looking to use caffeine to help with fat loss, it is an effective tool. But please remember the downsides of caffeine that can develop tolerance, but it can also lead to dehydration like I received. So overall, I hope this podcast was extremely helpful to you. If you developed any value from it, send it to a person that you feel that could benefit from it. Also, check out the link on our 4% community if you like tips like this, and you can become part of our community where I give even more great content away that's similar to this, but also in written form, certain quick start guides and ways to take the information that you're gathering and apply it quickly. All right. Thanks for being a part of the podcast today, and we will see you on the next one.